Good evening and welcome to the board's February 4th emergency meeting and its fiscal 2021 operating budget work session. Before we begin, I would like to ask everyone to silence or turn off your wireless communication devices because they may interfere with the taping of our meeting. Ms. Berkeley, at this point, would you please call the roll?
Good evening, board members and administration.
Good evening.
Ms. Ahmed.
Here.
Ms. Boozer-Strother.
Here.
Mr. Burrows.
Here.
Mr. Montero.
Here.
Mr. Murray.
Here.
Mrs. Queen.
Present.
Mrs. Shepherd. Mr. Swan. Mr. Thomas. Mr. Valentine. Mr. Wallace. Mrs. Williams. Mr. Omalola. Dr. Thornton.
Here. Thank you, Ms. Berkeley.
Ms. Shepherd's present.
Oh, she's coming.
Thank you.
I will now yield the floor to Board Member Rahila Ahmed, who chairs our Budget and Education Policy and Governance Committee. No, she chairs our Policy and Governance Committee, to make introductory comments on this evening's emergency item, PG 50320, Elementary School Students' Daily Physical Activity. Ms. Ahmed.
Sure, colleagues, good evening. I just wanted to give you some context of this bill. Essentially, the Prince George's County Delegation Education Subcommittee is looking to take action on this bill in the immediate future. And they had requested that we look at this matter and provide some type of position so that they can take that into account when they're discussing this item. Historically, this bill has been coming before us, or has been coming up in Annapolis year after year for the past couple of years. It essentially is requiring a certain amount of daily physical activity for us to implement in the public school system. In the past, we had taken a position, I remember last year we took a position of not supporting the bill, but this is before us for that purpose in that context. I don't know if administration would like to add on, or if there's any ways that I've miscommunicated this, please do feel free.
Thank you, Ms. Ahmed, and thank you for your leadership, you and your colleagues on our Policy and Governance Committee of this legislation as well as others. Dr. Goldson, do you have any comments to add?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, a motion is in order regarding this bill for discussion purposes.
I make a motion that we actually start discussing this bill.
That's what we will do once a motion is in order.
Well, okay, I'll make a motion that we accept their recommendation to support it.
Hearing no second of the motion dies for lack of a second. Is there an alternative motion? Is there an alternative motion? Huh? Is there an
We've been shot.
Is there an alternative motion?
Sorry, y'all.
Oh, it works? Oh, okay. Sorry. Hot mics. Mr. Chair, I move to oppose PG 50320.
Is there a second? It's been properly moved and seconded for discussion that the board take a non-support position on the legislation. Any discussion?
Discussion.
I'm sorry? Ms. Queen.
Ms. Queen, you guys, I really want you guys to think about that. Even if we change the motion and say that we support it, but they need to send some type of funds, because physical education is really needed in our school system. And if I remember last year, the reason why we didn't support it is because there was no funds attached to it. If we want funds attached to it, then we can request funds to be attached to it, but it's something that is needed. I don't know if you guys realize, but in District 6, we have a health enterprise zone, and our kids are definitely not only in need of physical education, but in very good food places to get food. So having physical education is so important. And it's really important for the kids in my district. So I'm really supporting this bill, and I hope you guys really think about supporting it. I understand it as a funding issue. I think when we support something and then we request and, hey, say, demand, say, we supported this, we want to do this, but we need funds to be able to do it. For us just to say no without even asking for funds or saying the reason why we're not supporting, I don't think it's a good idea, and it doesn't look good for us as a board.
Thank you. Any other comments? Ms. Ahmed?
Yes, I just wanted to kind of get some clarification from Ms. Queen. It sounds like you're suggesting a substitute motion to support with amendments. Is that correct? With the amendment that will support this if you fund it?
That's correct.
Ms. Queen, you've accepted that as a friendly modification, and I assume the seconder, who seconded?
Actually, I think Mr. Wallace.
Mr. Wallace, that's right. It's not friendly? Okay, so that's not a friendly. It would have to be a substitute. Ms. Queen, are you offering that as a substitute motion?
Yes.
Is there a second for the substitute? Second. Properly moved and seconded that the motion made by Ms. Queen to support with a request, support with necessary funding associated with it. That's the motion that's on the floor for discussion. Any other discussions?
Dr. Thornton?
Yes.
Just to provide just 2 quick points of information for the board to consider. One is that for the last several years, Delegate Walker has introduced this bill, and in some cases, he's pulled the bill in order to do a statewide bill. This particular bill is a local bill only. So the challenge the administration has is twofold. One is that it's about a $6.5 million fiscal note, and with no funding attached. And secondly is that it imposes on Prince George's County something that the rest of the state does not have as a requirement. Now, what normally happens is after the board has made its decision, and the previous has been to oppose, he then pulls the bill and then pushes it for a statewide bill. And he is on, well, I think he's no longer on Ways and Means, but the bill will go in front of Ways and Means as a policy item where other states, MSDE and others will weigh in. That's just some point of information for the board.
Thank you. Colleagues, the motion and the vote is on support with a funding mandate or request. Call the roll, please.
Ms. Ahmed.
Aye.
Ms. Boozer-Strother.
No.
Mr. Burrows.
Aye.
Mr. Montero.
No.
Mr. Murray.
Aye.
Mrs. Queen. Mrs. Shepherd.
No.
Mr. Wallace.
No.
Mrs. Williams.
No.
Dr. Thornton.
No. So the motion fails. We'll go back to the main motion, which is non-support with a non-support. Call the roll, please.
Ms. Ahmed.
Aye.
Mrs. Boozer-Strother.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Aye.
Mr. Burrows.
No.
Mr. Montero.
Aye.
Mr. Murray.
No.
Mrs. Queen.
No.
Mrs. Shepherd.
Yes.
Mr. Wallace.
Aye.
Mrs. Williams.
Aye.
Dr. Thornton.
Aye.
7 ayes, 3 nays.
Motion failed.
As chair, I'll make that rule. Motion fails for lack of 8 votes, so the board will take no position on this. We'll report that. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you, Ms. Ahmed, for your leadership of this. The Board of Education will now transition into its discussion of the FY21 operating budget. This work session is the last of 3 that the board has had. The board is conducting to develop its FY21 budget submission. I want to thank, at this point, Dr. Goldson for the excellent work that she did in preparing this budget for our consideration. Our purpose here tonight is to fine-tune the budget proposal that has been presented by Dr. Goldson. We're going to discuss four major areas tonight with brief presentations and questions from board members. Operation and Support Services, Mr. Stanton will be with us. Communications and Community Support, Mr. Christian Rhodes and his staff. And Chief of Staff Christian Rhodes will participate in, I guess, a discussion of the Chief of Staff's office. And then the Chief Executive Officer's office will also be available for discussion. I'll now yield the floor to Dr. Goldson for an opening statement regarding this evening budget submission. Dr. Goldson.
Yes. Thank you for joining us for the third budget work session. Tonight you will hear from Operations and Support Services, Communications and Community Supports, Chief of Staff, and from myself, representing Chief Executive Office. We will now begin with Mr. Barry Stanton, Operations and Support Services.
Welcome, Mr. Stanton.
Good evening. Today I'm here to answer.
Thank you, sir. Colleagues, the floor is now open for your questions of Mr. Stanton regarding Operations and Support Services. Let me say before you ask your questions, I want to thank Mr. Wallace and his committee, which has oversight responsibility for this. On that committee with Mr. Wallace is Mr. Burrows, Mr. Murray, Mr. Valentine, and Ms. Queen. I want to thank you all for the work that you do with Mr. Stanton and his office. Questions now for Mr. Stanton? Ms. Queen.
Good evening, Mr. Stanton. It's so good to have you on the hot chair. And it's about hot right now. So I just started walking my schools. Support the services that are needed in our schools, especially our older buildings. Even walking through Capitol Heights, I noticed they need windows. Some of my schools need painting. So with you being the operating and support services, I really want to get an honest answer from you. Are we giving enough money to handle the needs of our older schools that are really decade old and the services that I need to prepare these schools?
Well, I think the answer is yes to that question. I think the issue is understand our schools are old. Most of our schools that I found out are 41 years old or older. With that, trying to maintain and keep up with those maintenance issues of those schools is for me, is mind-boggling. Our maintenance staff has an outstanding role in keeping up with that. They've done a good job. But understand, our schools are substantially old, and the other thing is they're outdated. So the standards for maintaining the older schools is outdated compared to the newer schools. So as far as I'm concerned, we have the budget, we have the staffing. The issue is we have a lot of old schools that need maintenance work.
So in saying that, do we have enough workers to do the work? Because the job is not being done. Some of the things I'm seeing are things that should have been done from last year when I did a walk through. And another big thing is our parking lots, which I was going to bring up later, so I'll bring it up now. If we drive through our schools, these parking lots have big potholes in it. I've had a lot of complaints from my residents about when they drive through the schools and how it's messing up their tires. When I went through, and I live right by Walker Mill, and we have potholes right there in that school. But when I went through Capitol Heights Elementary School today, it was horrible. A couple of our schools have been horrible. We need all of our schools to be repaved. Do we have money, and that's my question, to do the things that we need to do to these schools from inside out?
So, I'm sorry, Mr. Stanton. So when you talk about paving versus building maintenance, those are two separate entities. It costs us on average approximately $100,000 to repave a small parking lot. We had the opportunity to drive through Crossland High School's parking lot today. That would be close to $500,000 to repave this lot. So honestly, do we have enough funds for 206 schools and then you add an additional 11 central offices? We definitely don't. But we also have to prioritize. And for us, we'd rather put our money inside the building where our students are and making sure that they're comfortable in terms of heating and air conditioning first, which we try to prioritize our repairs based on making sure that students and staff are accommodated first. And then we have a list of paving. We do it every year, but we just can't get to 206 schools in 1 year.
I just want it to be known, because we do have a big issue, but it is a funding issue. So I wanted to, the more funds we got, then we can actually handle the issues that we do have. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Ms. Queen. Did I see Ms. Williams' hand? Ms. Williams.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, take this opportunity to say thank you to Mr. Stanton for the work that he's doing to help with our transportation, with our buildings, with all of the things that you all do. It takes a lot. We have volume, but we don't have enough time. So one of the things that I have a question about is regarding transportation. That's my favorite topic today. So I understand that we are looking at some other opportunities to deliver better transportation services to our students. Do you feel that what we have in our budget will cover in order for us to be better at providing transportation, or do you see that we need to increase that a little bit for either staff, buses, other ways of transporting and delivering the services to students?
No, as far as transportation, the budget is appropriate. Understand, we have a large number of vacancies. And so with the number of vacancies and not having enough bus drivers to fill those vacancies, that's causing a majority of our problems. So the issue is not about money. The issue is about having enough people to drive the buses.
So when we talk about transportation and the people specifically, there is a lot of chatter about whether or not we pay our staff enough. How do we compare to the other jurisdictions or even statewide and nationwide?
So thank you for that opportunity to say thank you to our labor partners who we concluded our negotiations with 2250, which is where our transportation workers are, and that was signed by the Board of Education prior to us dismissing for the winter break. Those employees received their first pay increase in January. They will receive their next one in July. We are actually 102% above market rate for our bus drivers. So pay, honest and truly, is not the question here. It is back to the total number of drivers we have. And honestly, with the complicated school district with 206 schools, a variety of specialty schools, and the distance it takes to get to our locations, really the routes help to impact some of that on-time arrival issues that we're having.
So I know that the task force, because I sit on the task force with you, is working very hard to come up with some different ideas. One of the things that we are challenged with is our out-of-county transportation services. Now, this isn't a question, but just something that I'd like to put in the air for a possibility, is we do a lot of travel to provide those educational services to students that we cannot provide in the county. We have to travel outside of the county. Are we taking like 5 minutes out of our year to consider if we can bring some of those services in the county so that we can reduce the need to travel? And maybe that's more of a CEO question.
That is, because that actually, those students that Board Member Williams is referring to are those students who are in our non-public education sites who need additional special education services that we cannot provide in Prince George's County. And I will say we provide a comprehensive amount of support to our students. And so these are really facilities where they're getting individualized one-on-one, sometimes functional skills support that we aren't necessarily able to provide based on what their individualized education plan states. I will say that our Chief of Special Education Student Services reviews those, and it is our goal to continue to reduce, and we do. It's actually far less than it used to be. But I don't think we'll ever be at a point where it's zero.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that we are looking in that direction to try to provide as much services in-house as we get out of county. Because sometimes I understand those buses are traveling with a very small number of students, and if we could bring someone into the county, then I think it would be great. But it's great to hear that we review that on a regular basis to determine if we can provide those services in the county and do so. So thank you for your work. And as far as now on my other favorite topic, the building topic, I think we're going to be able to take advantage of the public-private partnership work that we're doing, the ACF. And with that, are we looking at just beyond that step? Because we're going to be taking 6 middle schools off of the state budget for CIP. Are we looking to see how we can move that money to some schools that were a little further down the pipeline and get using the state money that we're no longer using in the 6 middle schools?
So actually, there are several lanes that we're looking at, and I always try to use this analogy, but the local ACF, Alternative Construction Financing, better known as P3, will take 6 of them off, but there are a total of 37 on the list for cycle 1. Only 3 have been built out of the 37. This will take 6 off. We're hoping that the House Bill and Senate Bill 1, that's the Build to Learn Act, will also allow us to take an additional minimum of 6 off of the list as well. And then we're still following our traditional Interagency for School Construction path, which currently has 3 recommended on it and also has 3 more that are in the works to be built. That's the Cherokee Lane, William Wirt, and there's one other. Glen Ridge.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that it is, a bigger picture is being shared and that we are moving the money around appropriately. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Mr. Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Stanton, for answering our questions today. Fixed operations is something that's becoming a great interest of mine because we quickly learned that a school system is not just about the education of our students, but our workforce as well and our capacity to maintain.
Talk louder into the mic.
Last time I got in trouble for yelling.
So the audience can hear.
That much is true. I had a question regarding security services, and I want to thank you and your team for answering question 23 in the packet. Could you speak to the need of the additional 13 FTEs? I see the response here, but I asked that follow-up question on what, maybe I'm not seeing the need. Of course, we get anecdotal evidence, you know, parent reaches out to a board member, my child got into a fight in middle school, the teacher had to break it up. But I see a reduction here of just the past 2 years of 34%, but we're asking for almost 24 security assistants in middle schools. Could you just speak to that?
Yeah, the Maryland Center for School Security recommend that for every 1,000 students, we add a SRO. Now, understand, an SRO is actually a police officer that the police department and our police officers provide support for. So in trying to get close to some of those recommendations, instead of having SROs, we're asking for additional SAs. SROs are more expensive than SAs, but right now, to get close to meeting some of those recommendations, our security staff has looked at adding SAs in the middle schools based on that recommendation from the Maryland Center.
I just want to add that that's part of the Maryland Safe to Learn Act that was implemented. These are some of the recommendations from that act.
Thank you very much. And then my last question for this round is on question 28. It's on the educational sessions for food nutrition. Thank you for this, for the 10 schools. Just could you speak to the process, Mr. Stanton or the CEO? All right. Could you take a picture of your schedule? Take a picture. Please take a picture of your schedule. After tonight, we will not get duplicate copies of schedules, and we will not be able to assist in giving you another copy. So please take a picture of your schedule so that you can always have it with you. Because again, after tonight, we will Just could you speak to the process of which a school, I guess the principal, or does that have to be the student government at a middle school or high school? How do they request an education session on food nutrition services?
I don't have the details, but I'm going to ask Joan Shorter come up, please, to answer that question. That's why I made sure she was here tonight.
Smart man. Good. I can hear you, but they can't hear you.
So what we do is we take requests. So if the PTL or any of the teachers, PE teachers will request that we come out to conduct a nutrition education session. And so what we have been doing is getting out to the schools more often and letting them know that we are available to do that. So when the 10 schools that we had, that was my goal because we set goals every year what we want to work on. We want to be more out into the schools. So we partner with University of Maryland, FB, so they conduct some of our training sessions for us as well. If we're not able to do it, we don't have the staff.
So is that information sent in a listserv to all PE teachers throughout the school system? How would the PE teacher of Crossland High
So
School?
I'm not sure if it's in a listserv, but we work, our nutrition specialist is involved in the school health and the school wellness council, and through that consortium and that group, that information gets out. So if we want to introduce a new product, we talk about a new vegetable or a new fruit, that is one of the things that we do. Example, our fresh fruits and vegetable program, we have been in schools introducing the students and having nutrition education classes. So we're making the effort to reach out to those schools, especially those fresh fruits and vegetable program schools, to let them know that we're available to do that because that is part of our grant, what we do with the grant.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Ms. Ahmed.
Thank you, Dr. Thornton. My colleagues have already kind of spoken about food and nutrition, transportation. I wanted to bring up to light building services. Mr. Stefanelli, thank you so much for your and your team's efforts to make sure that our schools are functioning. I see here that there's a program enhancement specifically for building services. That's nearly $5 million to enable high schools to operate 7 days a week. My question is that, this is good. My question is, what is needed to move the needle that's within our control? Because I know that there's stuff going on the state level, but what is within our control that we can do to move the needle?
Well, let's just say on this one, this is moving the needle. And the reason I say that, we're spending a substantial amount of overtime on high-level positions working on weekends and in our buildings that I think is ridiculous. They have higher salaries. So with these positions, we can free up the higher salary positions, have the lower level positions come in and do custodial work, open up the schools, and maintain the schools. So this is one of the recommendations that Sam brought forward that I really support because it gets into our overtime numbers and our staffing numbers, and this helps bring that overtime number down, which I've been pushing and Dr. Goldson has been pushing for the last year.
Thank you, Mr. Stanton. I would like to ask that if it's possible for us to really track the effect of this
Yes.
program enhancement, because if it's working, then that's good. But we need to just kind of see
Yes.
what that effect is going to look like. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ahmed. Mr. Wallace for 3 minutes.
Ms. Queen, you got some round one?
Oh, I didn't see the hands, I'm sorry. We'll go to Ms. Boozer-Strother, and then Ms. Queen, was your hand?
All right, thank you so much. I'd like to turn the conversation to the Universal Meals Program and sort of in a situation where our colleague, Board Member Wallace, has put a proposal in front of us on universal meals. So if I may yield to him during my 5 minutes, I don't know if that's, are we able to do that?
No,
Do we have to
you're
stop the
not.
clock?
No, you're not.
Okay, then I'll start. So, Dr. Goldson, when you first announced the budget with the beginnings of universal meals for the community schools, certainly really appreciated that because I know 14 of those schools are in District 3, almost a third of all of them, and I know that food insecurity and access is #1 need, and I anticipate our community schools coordinators will be working on food access from multiple angles. So now the promise of universal breakfast, lunch, and supper is now out there. However, when we look at the entire system and beginning a universal meals program, starting with the elementary level, Board Member Wallace's proposal, that does reach, to me, is more universal. During the government shutdown, I think we all learned that more of our families are living paycheck to paycheck, and the meal costs are significant. So I guess the question I have is, can we start an elementary universal meals program that would include much of this budget already for the 45 community schools, because most of them are elementary, and do both? Are we able to bring those two proposals together and figure out that dollar amount to begin?
Yes, so it's a little bit more complicated than just saying add on those 45 and then the other, making a total of approximately 120 elementary schools, which is why I propose to start small and then continue over time to phase it in over time. What complicates it is that we also are grateful that we had a 4,000 student increase, but that also means that the county council is going to have to give us $18 million more than what they gave us before last year for maintenance of effort. It's going to be difficult for them to meet that. In order to do what you're asking, I'd have to be asking for an additional request, and I'd have to cut somewhere else. With the ability to now offer it for our 45, it's the beginning steps. It acknowledges that we do want to provide support to our elementary school students, and this is the best way that we could do it within the confines of what we believe those budget constraints are. Now, there's no question about it. I believe that even when we finish our process and we go to the county council, what has happened year after year, we still are going to have to reduce. So I would never want to have my community believe that we have the ability to pay for universal meals for all elementary schools, and I know financially we just will not be able to. And so a better way to do it is the proposal presented is to phase it in over time. Then I also just want us to be cautious as we phase in for our secondary and our high school students, their ability to complete the free meals application is important, because for them it allows them to waive many of their college application fees, their SAT, their ACT, IB. So with them comes, they have a variety of additional services and support. When we move into doing universal, then that means families don't complete that form anymore, and they no longer have those services available to them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boozer-Strother. Mr. Wallace, no, Ms. Queen.
Dr. Goldson, I hear you. I'm going to go back on what Ms. Boozer-Strother was just talking about before I talk about safety. But the thing is, when we have other programs, and I use William Hall when they were getting their free and reduced lunch, and then it was canceled, but they wasn't actually filling the forms out. So I think maybe we still need to make it a requirement each year for the people to fill that forms out, and that would help, because what happens is when programs do stop, we don't really actually know the numbers. So I think even though we may be giving it, we can still require that it be filled out as, you know, a requirement of giving it. So I just wanted to add that to it.
We already plan to do that for the 45.
Okay, great. So my question is also now on school safety. Since we done talked about everything else, let's go back to safety. I just want to also shout out and thank Prince George's County Police Department, who have had their police officers at a lot of our schools all this week. I don't know if you guys noticed that. They've been sitting outside all of our schools, and they actually are helping us with safety, and I do appreciate that. So I just want to say to you actually, Mr. Stanton, and to your staff, I really feel that we do really a great job with school safety. I know there's a lot of things that we can do better, and a lot of communication that we can do better actually with communicating not only to the parents and to our community, but working with the students to help them to understand a little bit of how important safety is. I just want to know, do you feel, and I always ask the question because we're talking about budget, that we have enough money in the budget to do the things that we need to do to make sure that our students feel safe, that our staff feels safe, and that our communities are safe at the schools?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with, I mean, you know, my background's in public safety, so I'm comfortable with what we have right now. But understand, we're applying for grants to help offset that. What you see with the police officers around our schools is because of Mr. O'Neill and staff applying for a grant to add additional police officers around all our schools. That was like a $1 million grant. So those are the kind of things we need to do to think outside the box. Those are things I want to do to think outside the box. Dr. Goldson has been supporting that. But understand, our goal is, we're not here to lock up everybody. You know, let's be real. And so we need to look at other options for the protection of our kids, our youth, and our school system. So you're going to see different approaches to safety, but I'm not going to, you know, I don't necessarily believe we need to have a police force in our school system. I think we need to look at different options and look at the staffing we have, and those things we need to address to phase in over time, we phase them in. But I'm not big on increasing our school safety program.
Well, I just want to say thank you also to Dr. Goldson and his staff, because you guys have really been doing a great job of going outside the box and going outside the 9 dots, and it makes me proud to be in this county.
Thank you, Ms. Queen. Mr. Wallace, and then colleagues, hopefully we can move to the next section. Mr. Wallace.
Thank you, Dr. Thornton. And I want to thank my colleague, Ms. Boozer-Strother, for kind of reading my mind. On in the packet, question 18 is what I posed to the administration about and Dr. Goldson, you mentioned, you alluded to it, a rollout plan. The proposal that I gave before the policy committee was some $15 million. While I know that is ambitious, I know it is also not affordable in 1 year. And so I want to first thank you. I already thanked you, but you were not here the first time. So the third time we're here. I want to thank you for the proposal that you have for our community schools. Only have one of those, unlike Ms. Boozer-Strother, only one in District 7. But I want to thank you for that proposal. If I am correct, and I know I'm not the mathematician up here, but if my numbers are correct, based off of the answers to 18B, it's approximately 1.2, 1.3 million per grade level per year to cover the non-farm students in the identified categories. And this is also including grades 6, 7, and 8 in some areas, and special centers 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The proposal that I put forth was only pre-K to 5. So my numbers may be a little bit off, but I just did some calculations. 7 grades divided by 18,000. That's a 2572 times the 275 per day is $7,072 per grade level per day. 7,072 times 180 days is about 1.273 million. With the proposal for the community schools, it's about $2 million. If we did a rollout of $2 million per year, 2.5 million, could we cover 2 or 3 grade levels per year and have an implementation period of 3 or 4 years to cover those 7 grade levels? Do you think that's something that would be too ambitious?
So it's not really about ambitious, it's about adding additional funding to this existing budget when we already know that we're going to more than likely have a conversation with our county council that we're going to have to reduce. So in order to add, we have to take away. And so I will be asking you all, what would you recommend we take away?
No, it wouldn't be taken away from what you proposed in the 45 this year.
Oh, you're saying
in
for the
fiscal year
subsequent
2022,
years?
can we say for all non-community schools, pre-K to first grade, and then second grade to fourth grade, and then fifth grade, and so on?
So actually, this conversation would be helpful to have in April when our elected officials close out this legislative session. Because if we are able to pull off the additional funds for Kerwin, then there is the potential to do what you've asked us to do. In addition, there is a proposal on the table right now for there to be 20 additional community schools added to the 45 for the next year. And in that list that I reviewed that you will receive in your weekly update, there are a lot of other board districts that are represented in that will help us do that phase-out piece.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Burrows.
Good evening, Mr. Stanton.
How you doing?
And most of my questions I just normally ask you offline, but I did want to mention the security addition and the budget. I would like to meet with you offline to understand the strategy around middle schools. I'm not I want to learn more about what the thinking and thought process is around it.
Yeah, on that also, I'd like to have my security director in there so we can have a full discussion because he came up with this program that I supported, so I'm good to have that discussion with you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then my last question, where in the budget, if there's a health or safety issue at a school regarding a facility, I know in the past, and I believe in our last budget, we always put aside money to deal with those issues. Is that reflected in this budget as well?
It is, it's part of the base, so it's part of our regular budget.
Okay.
And it falls under building services operations.
And is the amount sufficient? I mean, are we able to, if something comes up that is a concern for the health and safety of students, are we able to meet that need? Is there enough money set aside in our budget to meet that need as they come up?
Yes, there's money in there to meet that need. Obviously, you're going to have emergencies that come up.
Right.
We've been dealing with that all year long. We'll continue to deal with that, but we have sufficient funding to deal with those emergencies right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burrows. Colleagues, we'll now move to the second. Thank you, Mr. Stanton. Mr. Rhodes and Ms. Hill, Communications and Community Supports. Is that right? So we'll move to the next section.
Hey, thank you. We'll go ahead and begin while Ms. Hill
Okay, thank
approaches
you.
the
Thank you.
stage. We'll start with our Communications and Community Supports.
Thank you. And while Ms. Hill is coming, I want to remind the public and those in attendance that the questions that you're hearing board members ask, these are in addition to numerous questions that have been posed by board members to Dr. Goldson and her staff. And they have responded to those questions, and the responses are available to you online so you can see the richness of the engagement of the board with Dr. Goldson. Dr. Goldson and Mr. Rhodes and Ms. Hill, you're ready. Colleagues, your questions now regarding communications and community supports. Mr. Wallace.
Just a quick one. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Alluding to a comment and a question that I had last week at our budget session around IT and possibly having a system-wide application that is a little bit more in-depth. And I was alluding to a tragic situation that happened 2 weekends ago where I got 50 notifications on one thing. If I can get 50 notifications about one event, why couldn't we have a PGCPS app that could blast out an alert to everyone's smartphone that tells us about this event going on today? We did it through the Gov Delivery, and so I know we do have that service available, but there's something that individuals in the community that may not be so inclined to go to Gov Delivery or may not be subscribed to Gov Delivery, that they can go to the App Store or the Google Play Store and download an app, and we can get some robust communication. Has there been any talks about that?
Yes, I actually talked to Dr. Watts about this shortly after last work session. I mean, there's a couple things related to what we get on our phones as we subscribe to the Washington Post or to ESPN. Let's be real, these are multi-billion-dollar entities whose jobs are to entertain and to provide information. So they can invest millions upon millions in app development, and basically what you were alluded to last week was about the interface, what it looks like when it comes to us. We can provide any type of data. We send out a robocall or a text message, but it doesn't look like the Washington Post or the other entities. So we are looking at revising our communication tool to parents. I think there's going to be a new RFP that will go out to look at that, and that's one of the things that we can work on. But let's also be honest about, and one of the requests in communications is updating our website infrastructure, because all the great graphics come with a cost that you don't see. And that's one of the requests that we have here, is upgrading our content management system so that we can push out what you see on our computer to your phone. And that's increased technology that we're working on right now.
No, I definitely noticed. I want to thank Ms. Hill and Mr. Rhodes for the work that you all are doing. It seems like our school system, when I joined the board, our graphics were just completely 2 generations behind. And probably was the technology that we were using at the same time too. So I thank you all, and I want to thank my colleagues for that investment, because it shows, it pays dividends. But you're absolutely right, the interface of what that communication looks like to our stakeholders. And what I've come to realize is that we have different mediums and different channels that we can communicate. While one school may only use Class Dojo or School Dojo, whatever they call them, sorry, and one classroom teacher may use Google Classroom. There's no uniform medium that everyone is going to use, that if I'm a parent and I have a child at Crossland and I got a child at Thurgood Marshall, I can go to one source and get one communication for both of my children's schools. I have to download this one, so make sure I'm subscribed to this one, make sure this email doesn't go to my spam folder. Have there been any talks about just streamlining one service that every principal on down can utilize?
So I think what we've done now is now mixed a classroom instructional tool with the tool that I initially thought you were referencing, and that's the communication piece of us getting information to our parents. So we have an app, the Blackboard app, that you can download for any parent. And I pulled mine up because I am too also a parent of PGCPS. And so I have the opportunity to pull up my child's My School Bucks account, his grades in his class, his schedule for the day, and I get text messages at least twice a day from my child's school about everything underneath the sun. So it really comes back to the end user having the professional development to understand how to use a lot of our tools in terms of the notification piece. When we talk about the Class Dojo or the instructional tools, that then becomes a conversation that we have to have with our labor partner about requiring the use of one tool, like we had to do for SchoolMax, which is the tool that we use to provide grades every week and so that parents can monitor their students' academic progress.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Ms. Ahmed.
Thank you, Dr. Thornton. I actually have one question or one statement about communications and one about partnership. Both of them have to do with expected outcomes. I don't know if you remember, but a couple of years ago, Mr. Rhodes, you had presented to us as a board kind of like a perception study. And as part of that perception study, it really showed that even, folks may have a fluctuating perception about the system as a whole, but they really love their school. They really love the local, the teachers that are teaching students, and that local environment is really where we thrive when it comes to love for our district. And so my thought here when I was reading these expected outcomes was that they were all system-wide. My question is, what are the school-based supports that we have to enhance the communication capabilities of our local schools? And can that, if we don't have that currently, can that be incorporated as an expected outcome in some type of way for next year?
Ms. Ahmed, my team spends a lot of time, I myself spend a lot of time speaking with school-based staff almost every day, multiple times a day, trying to educate them on best practices for reaching parents and how to best use the tools we provide.
And to go a little bit deeper, so part of what Raven's team does is twofold. One is about 2 years ago, Raven created a template document, a template folder that has every single letter under the sun around incidents. So you see, as much as possible, 206 schools, every single day there's something happening in some school, and we've tried our hardest through Dr. Golson's push to provide uniformity in how we communicate and using the same language. So one school shouldn't be giving you something that another school isn't on the same incident. In addition to that, they provide, I think Max is here and several other staff, they work in schools almost every single day and updating the website and helping them understand how to utilize the communication tools they have. Challenges when you have turnover in staff and administration and things like that, we have to go back out and retrain, but staff is doing a pretty significant job. We can look at how we can incorporate that as an expected outcome. That's something we can definitely look at.
And to Ms. Ahmed, I'd like to add, we learn a lot from the schools as well. Some of the tools they use, we know it's because of customer friendliness, and it causes us then to reevaluate the usefulness of, say, a Gov delivery or the usefulness of our website.
So yes, I will ask, you're doing the work. So if it could be incorporated under core services and in expected outcomes, I think that would be really helpful, just so that we can track it. If you're doing it, then folks should know that you're doing it. And we should be able to see how we can even make that process even more efficient. So that would be my request on the communication side. On the partnership side, I really see community partnerships as being a place to fill our gaps. And some of the expected outcomes here, when I'm reading it, it's more about the breadth of partnerships. It's more about, you see here, ensuring 100% of PGCPS schools have at least one partnership with an external organization. That's a great goal, but I also think that we should have goals that are hyper-specific to some of the needs that we have. Things like tech, equipment, furniture, because I know those partnerships are happening, but if we could be really keen on where are our gaps and where do we want to focus this year, I'd really appreciate that as an expected outcome for this section.
So there actually, what you see in your booklet are expected outcomes, but there are several strategies that fall underneath those outcomes that the board actually does not see. And making sure that you align the right partner with the right school is the work that Barbara Holtstreeter does. We might have a partner who says, I really want to work at Crossland, but we might already have that service being provided, and so we will steer them to another location that needs that kind of support that they may be an expert in.
That's all, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ahmed. Ms. Queen?
Thank you, Dr. Thornton. Communication question. Going on page 159 under communication, I have a question concerning software license. How come it's such a large increase?
Yeah, so I mentioned to you about the content management system for our website, and if the board wants, we can go a deeper dive or we can talk about it offline. But in short, our website is outdated, and the content management system that's behind it, the company actually went out of business. So we are at a point that if we do not upgrade the content, this is what's behind the scenes, we will not be able to add more to it. Montgomery County, just using it, Fairfax County have upgraded their systems a couple years ago, and they're in the millions of dollars. What we took the approach last year, Dr. Goldson said, don't come with the Cadillac. She didn't say a Pinto, but it was pretty close to that. So what Max and team did was basically pull out a 3 to 4 year plan to phase in the amount of money that we need to upgrade our content management system. If not, when it snows and people go to our website to look at whether or not it crashes. And they have to put up basically a vanilla page that just has red letters. Right now, that's because our content management system is so outdated.
Okay, thank you for that. But I also just want to actually just say you guys are doing a great job with marketing and communicating and getting things out. I get very excited when I see Prince George's County Public Schools being marketed because we was not doing a great job at it, I have to say. But now I see it shows the greatness that we do have in our school system because it is a lot. And I just think marketing is so important to show the awesomeness in our school system. So I do want to thank you for the marketing that you do. I also have one last question. My concerns is because we're dealing with communication. How well are we working with partnership with our community, our parents and our citizens, and then our civic associations? Because some schools do great at the partnership. Some of our principals and our school leaders know how to communicate. And then there's some complaints I get at some schools where they don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to talk to. Are we doing some type of training, some type of communication training? Some type of diversity training to let us realize that we have diverse personality traits out here, and we as individuals who are representing a lot of students got to know how to handle that personality trait, whether it's a student, whether it's a staff member, or whether it's a community leader or a parent.
Sure. So part of what you mentioned actually falls under family and school partnerships, which is under Dr. Helen Coley's shop. But I would say that we do try to work with all of our stakeholders and communicate to them. There's a big C communication, which is what Ms. Hill is responsible for, and then there's little C communication, which many of our schools are responsible for. We work with them, we partner with them, but that particular training that you're talking about really falls under Dr. Sheila Jackson. And I know that she has, every single quarter, there's a parent leaders conversation where we're pulling people in. And this year, we've been able to expand out to civic associations and others. And the Adopt a School program that Dr. Goldson actually started. Right now, currently 164 total schools have been adopted. Many of those are community organizations who have been in our community for years, but just didn't have an avenue to work with us. So in doing these low-hanging fruit things, we're bringing more people into our district.
Thank you. Ms. Shepherd.
I first want to give you guys kudos for putting money into the budget to kind of align websites that we have in terms of the PG county systems and also the individual websites that each school has. I love the fact that when I log in into see any information, if the school is going to be closed, I could see that it says Español, and then it says it in English, so thank you. So with that, I have a question, if there is any possibilities to also add other languages, as we have a high population of Middle Eastern families and stuff.
Yeah, so the short answer is yes. I mean, what we've done normally, and Dr. Love is here. I have to say Dr. Love because she actually recently got her doctorate, so kudos to you, Jennifer Love. But what we try our hardest to do is look at what our largest populations for additional languages, and those are the ones you're going to see on our social media and website. But her office manages the translations of all of our materials into whatever language necessary in our district. So if there's a school in particular that has a high concentration of immigrants from whatever country that speak whatever language, we work with them. You do see a couple line items here for professional contracted service, because we don't always have every single person on staff to handle that. We may have to, utilize outside resources to do that, but we can.
Thank you. My next question was, Dr. Goldson, we talked about aligning the schools. One day I just sat down looking at every website, and I don't know, it just was like some of them looked beautiful, so inviting, with so many information. The customer service that you just mentioned is very important. So I wonder if there is a possibility to have outcomes to see how do we measure or look at the best graded websites and to ensure that other administrators also follow that protocol, that way, the best practice.
So each school varies because actually they have staff who update their websites and they're not paid for that additional support. And so the level of expertise around technology varies. I've been to schools where they have a teacher who solely focuses on social media engagement in that school. That's by choice. She loves Twitter, and she stays on it every day at this one particular school. But we believe with the addition of the new website platform, it'll be a lot easier for us to train, monitor, and improve what each school sites look like.
Yeah, and I would encourage to make sure that we have like some kind of outcome, because it makes us be consistent instead of having, one that looks okay, barely information, not inviting, and other ones that look excellent.
Ms. Shepherd, we do have analytics on, say, the most visited websites, how long a person spends on each site. But in addition, we're also looking at doing focus groups with our Spanish-speaking families to get a better sense of how they want to receive information from us and the types of information they're looking for on our tools.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shepherd. Mr. Valentine.
Well, I'll say Ms. Shepherd stole my thunder. That was my question. For many people, PTCPS is a school. It's not a school district. And so when people talk to me about whether they should put their child in our school system, I'm going to ask them what school you zone for. If I don't know, I'll find out. And I'm going to send them to that district's website. I'm not going to send them most likely to PTCPS. I want to look at who the principal is, ask them to schedule a meeting with the principal, do a walkthrough, and on many occasions, I can see the website, and it's not a good first impression, particularly for someone who's like thinking about taking their child out of a private school and putting them into one of our schools. So in many cases, that's our front door. That's whatever you want to call that, the analogy. That's sort of the first face they see. And so I just want to reiterate the importance of that. I mean, if we're thinking about enrollment, this is going to be, again, the first face they see. Communication, highlighting what's working. I imagine if my colleagues like me, oftentimes I have to reiterate a lot of the things that we're doing or have done. When someone says, well, we don't do that, I say, well, I beg your pardon, we've been doing it for years, and here's where we do it. And so if you're not following us on Twitter, or you're not following your school on Twitter, and you're not actually on Twitter when it comes across your timeline, and you a day later or a couple hours late, you don't see it. And so anything that we can do, just continue to support you all, particularly with the training, identifying someone on the staff, even a student. I mean, if there's someone particularly who's a senior or at a high school, or someone who's really, really trusted, works with the principal on this, a PTA president, someone who's interested in doing this, also very vested in making sure the school gets a strong face to do this. I follow as many PTAs as I can on my own Twitter and try to retweet a lot of stuff or tag them on things that I'm posting. But unlike most districts, because you have so many schools, they're not going to go to PTTPS per se unless they're sort of trying to get into an specialty program or something like that. But it's going to be around what that school and that school district looks like. And so I just want to reiterate what my colleague has said, how we train our staff. If there's any way to sort of hold the principal accountable for that, I don't know if there's any evaluation or just having the ID put that on the agenda when they're meeting with the principals on a regular basis to sort of continue to ask them how they can be supportive. Or in many ways, if there's a feeder high school, a middle school to the high school, and they're doing it really well, ask them whether they're willing to sort of work together on that, because again, there's a connection. So I just want to say that, I mean, my child's schools has a Facebook page and a Twitter account, very strong PTA. That's been one of the strongest recruitments for our program. For those who just don't know, we have a Montessori program, which I often had to reiterate, but many people just don't know. But thank you for prioritizing this and all the work that you do.
Thank you, Mr. Valentine. Mr. Swan.
Thank you, Dr. Thornton. Good evening. Thank you for being here and for all the work that you guys continue to do. A couple quick questions. Just I certainly reiterate a lot of the comments that have already been made, so I'll spare the time. Request for data. Can we get a list of the partners you mentioned that have adopted schools across the
Sure, we can
system?
We can send
And I don't know if
also.
there's a list. Is that a list publicly available on our website somewhere?
It's
so
not on the
that
website yet,
communities
but-
kind of know what organizations are kind of like stepping up and helping with these services? I think that's a great way to continue to advocate for involvement.
Sure, we can provide that for you, no problem.
Awesome. Second thing, does the CRM backend that you were speaking about for the county's website support the school websites, and will that investment improve all those sites? If you could speak just a little bit to that, about where that maybe is that in your plan, in your 3-year plan, and those investments to kind of help some of the concerns that I think just mentioned?
Yeah, this came up 3 times, so I'm going to ask Max Pugh just to give a quick. Dr. Thornton will cut you off. So
Awesome. And then my last question,
Yeah.
while he comes up, is if we can, could you speak to, I see expected outcome, Ms. Hill, about the 5 to 7 strategic student events promoting relationships for student needs? Can you speak to where we are with that, and just what's the plan and how you are selecting where those events are going to happen? I would like to hear information about that. Thanks.
sure, I'll let Max speak, and then we can provide the second one. That's actually Ms. Barbara Holt-Streeter, who can, but we, depending on time and Dr. Thornton's ability, we'll see.
Please, sir. Good evening.
Our new school splash pages, which we'll roll out with our data dashboard, you'll see that kind of model between a combination of their content and our content. Because we do find there's a wide variation of, we have graphic artists at high schools that do all these custom graphics, looks phenomenal. But then you have elementary school who has no one really to even touch it for months. And we keep an eye on that data. 80% of the people who come to us start at a school and digitally. So no matter how beautiful our homepage looks, if the schools are not reflecting that, we know that's an issue. And so we try to encourage the schools. There's a high turnover, as Mr. Rhodes has said. So it's somewhat of a struggle, but we believe with the new content management system, as we push content to make sure every school has good content, whether we have created it or they have created it, I think it's going to be an improvement.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you.
Sure.
I had one more question about the
Please,
events,
go ahead.
about the events to 5
Sure,
to 7?
the 5 to 7 events. So Ms. Streeter's here. We can do two things. We can do a combination of just providing them to you,
Okay.
if that's helpful, or she only has a minute and 15 seconds.
I don't know if there's just a quick response, but I would like the information. I'm sure my colleagues would as well. But I don't know if you have comments or you wanted.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'll do this in less than a minute, and we'll provide additional information in writing for the list of partners as well as various events that we do. We do have a calendar. Our events will vary, starting with the unveiling of our Adopt a School signs, which will take place next month. We have, as Christian Rhodes mentioned, about 160 schools that have adopted our schools. We have over about 100 partners as well. In addition to that, that will take place in February. We have the Mornings with Monica. We also have, that's an event that we average about 150 people that come out. Starbucks is one of our avid partners as well. We have First Baptist Church of Glenarden, who's adopted 14 schools. They did an amazing job for the Dr. Martin Luther King Community Day. They will continue. They spent about $15,000 just on 14 schools and will continue throughout the year as well. We have another one with Collington's organization. They've adopted a school that they will do about $15,000 in renovation for their, I think it's outside in their grounds as well. So that just gives you a quick sample, and again, I can share more of that in detail.
Thank you very much. Mr. Burrows.
I'll be very brief. I just want to echo Ms. Queen's sentiment. I believe communications has gotten, my confidence in communications has just gotten so much higher and stronger. And so thank you for that and all that you've done for that. I also wanted to recognize my councilwoman, Monique Anderson Walker, who snuck in, who is here, always visiting schools. And as many of you know, her mother, my grandmother, served our board for a number of years with excellence. So thank you for being here, Councilwoman.
Thank you. And colleagues, that will exhaust this particular section, and we'll go right into Mr. Burrs as Chief of Staff. I do want to say to the board, at least my appreciation for the work that we are doing to help to deliver a positive narrative that can be delivered to the community. And Dr. Goldson, we really appreciate the work that you and your staff are doing with us in what we're trying to do. We all know what we're trying to do. An empowerment narrative that will carry the school system. So I want to thank the board colleagues for helping to do that.
Dr. Thornton, just to add to that, I actually was going to say the same thing. The same staff are working here, right? We've added some additions and we've made some strategic decisions, but what's different are the bodies around this dais, and including our CEO, but also our board leadership and other board members who were working better. It's easier when we're focused on students. And I need to say that out loud, because what you've seen from our communications team is an effort to focus more on students and less on people, on our adults. And when we do that, then we get positive perceptions about our school system. So that's an encouraging message for us as a body.
Thank you. Colleagues, because we did start a little late, we have 2 more sections to cover, and we have about 30 minutes within which to do it. So let's move now to Mr. Rhodes' Operation Chief of Staff. Any questions? Any opening comments, Mr. Rhodes or Dr. Goldson? Colleagues, any questions of Mr. Rhodes? Mr. Burrows. You'll yield to Ms. Queen?
Yes. I just want to not have any questions, but say thank you, Mr. Rhodes, for doing an awesome job at helping Dr. Goldson. I know a lot of times I reach out to you with a whole bunch of emails daily, and you make sure they get answers. So I just want to let you know that I do appreciate you making sure that my constituents' questions are answered. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rhodes, Mr. Burrows, I'm sorry.
That went faster than I thought it would. Can Ms. Alvin go? I'm trying to pull up Ms. Alvin.
Wait a minute. Why are you calling my board members? Who do you want to call on?
Ms. Ahmed.
Ms. Ahmed.
Thank you, Dr. Thornton, Mr. Burrows. Mr. Rhodes, I really would just like to make a pitch to have as many of the folks on the pupil accounting and boundary team be very heavily integrated into our community. I think they have a very difficult job. They have a job that can it's very difficult. It can also be very divisive in the community, and I think the way to overcome that is really to have those folks present as much as possible. I know Mr. Dove used to be a principal at Glendale, and is very well-known, and does that, but I would love for the entire Boundary team to be able to be just as integrated, as well as within the other departments as well.
I just want to note the Boundary team is one person, which is why we are in the process of posting a RFP to get an external analysis done for Boundary, but for Pupil County School Boundary, as you acknowledge, Mr. Dove does go out to schools, and he will be expecting the same of his staff.
Thank you, Mr. Madden. Now, Mr. Burrows.
Ms. Rhodes, I'm aware that the foundation reports to you. I have some questions about the foundation.
Sure. Ms. Wilson here?
She is. So as Ms. Wilson is coming up, I'll just give a little brief overview of the foundation that Mr. Burrows is referencing is our Excellence in Education Foundation, which we have spent a lot of time of kind of re-energizing that foundation because it had kind of become stabilized over years, and I just want to thank her as she comes forward to answer your questions.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Wilson. I just want to compliment your work, to be honest. I'm so proud of the different school system events and the amount of money that you've been able to raise from the community. And that means a lot that our stakeholders are pouring in. So can you talk about the amount of money that we raised at the gala?
Our gala, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Our gala, and thank you all for your support of the gala. It meant a whole lot to us that you showed up in strong numbers, and we expect the same this coming year on October the 16th, 2020. Have two events going on at the same time. We raised $173,000 at that gala, sir.
That was awesome, and it was a wonderful event that showcased our students. And prior to that, I believe there was a golf tournament.
Yes, sir.
How much did that raise?
The golf tournament raised $110,000.
Okay. And where has this money gone, and what are we doing, with this? How are we leveraging these resources to help our students?
Well, our main focus is scholarships for our graduating seniors in the 2019-2020 school year. It is our desire to continue to be able to award 34 students with over $125,000 worth of scholarships. We've also had partnerships with other businesses in our community, like Dark Cars, who's donated $25,000 to the foundation to help us eradicate student lunch debt. And that is also an initiative that we're looking at in the foundation to be able to help provide the resources to alleviate that problem in our district.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. Anything I can do to be supportive, I look forward to working for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Mr. Swan.
Couple quick comments. First, I want to echo Mr. Burrows' comments. I think the foundation is doing a phenomenal job. When I heard about some of the things, I didn't know. I'm excited. I will be in attendance at the event certainly this year. So I will see you all there. Also like to, Mr. Rose, commend you on just your response with me and all my questions and working with the staff. It's a breath of fresh air, Dr. Goldson, to have someone like Mr. Rose kind of just as engaged and as knowledgeable as you are, which I think means a lot. Outside of that, actually, I'll yield back. I think some of the other comments are being made, so.
Thank you very much. Mr. Burrows for 3 minutes. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Williams.
Sorry. I'd like to echo also, Mr. Rhodes, you do a wonderful job every day. It's going to be today, but.
Mr. Rhodes, are you giving out some funds for this?
Better not be school system funds.
Right.
Well, please check your email boxes. Thank you.
Ms. Williams, please.
One of my only question really is to talk about how you're able to accomplish your goals compared to last year, we see a reduction in your overall budget, but an increase in staff. And I see that there is some maneuvering of staff. So I just want to give you an opportunity to articulate how you're able to accomplish that feat.
Yeah.
Less budget, but more staff.
Yeah, through prayer and supplication. So the reality is that my office actually ends up being a catch-all for many initiatives or issues that Dr. Goldson identifies as strategic or important. So last year, for example, when she was 2 years ago when she was Deputy Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, Transforming Neighborhoods Initiative fell under Dr. Goldson when she was the Deputy Superintendent. When she moved into the CEO role, we didn't just want that we were doing a central office reorganization, new people and new positions. We didn't want that to fall through the cracks. So what you saw was my budget increased $3+ million to basically take that initiative from her as Deputy Superintendent and hold it in a space until we had the infrastructure in the organization. So you see a decrease of about $3 million that went now to community schools, which is under Dr. Helen Coley. So often what you'll see in my budget is a catch for what ultimately will go somewhere else. I'm not managing schools, but I also want to make sure that if a program like community schools is going to be implemented with fidelity, and Dr. Goldson has deemed it important, my job is to make sure that I have at least a touch and an appropriate handoff to others in the organization. And lastly, I'll just say, great staff. We, as I said to Mr. Burrows, many of the people have been here before, but we're new focus, integrated leadership, as Dr. Thornton would like to say, and clear purpose of work. It's easier to get stuff done in a quicker time frame than what we did in the past.
And I appreciate you sharing
But I
that.
do want to clarify, there's not additional staff added to that office.
Yeah, I see that there is some movement of staff in with the pupil accounting and some other things. So I see that. I just wanted to give you that opportunity to share that because it's important to understand that last year we saw an increase, and there was a lot of questions about the increase of your budget. This year we see a decrease. Next year we may see something similar because of what you said, you're holding a program until it can be distributed amongst another department. So I think it's important that we understand the process of how we maneuver each year and exchange, move programs, people, and we're redistributing them. And because I think overall in this budget, the one thing that I did see was a lot of reduction in cost with a balanced increase in another area. And so looking at how we do that is so important that we don't take this as a one-for-one each year, that we look at how everything that we say every year, throughout the year, it comes to fruition in this budget for next year. And so being able to follow that and having those thoughts in mind as we look at this budget, it may reduce some of the questions that we have. At least for me, it did, because I was listening and taking notes and seeing it play out in this budget. So I appreciate what you do every day, especially being Dr. Goldson's right-hand man, and accomplishing some of the things that we do. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Ms. Shepherd?
So, Mr. Ross, I also want to echo what everybody's saying. Rhodes, I'm sorry. See, my Spanish just kicks in, my bilingual self. But I want to say, Dr. Goldson, you have a good one that is your right hand. He is amazing with everybody. I appreciate that what you say, that you want to focus on the students, and that's what makes it successful, you doing your job. And in terms of your staff, they do as much as their leader does. So I just wanted to say thank you for being open-minded, answering my calls, taking my feedback, and then me seeing that the result of that.
I do want to add, I am extremely grateful to have Mr. Rhodes, but I also have 9 other right hands, and they're chiefs of special education, student services, school leadership, CFO. I mean, like, I could go down the line, so I just want to acknowledge them. I'm sure they're working. I don't want them to feel slighted.
I'm going to have no gas in my car when I get back out. They're going to haze me, but Dr. Goldson is correct. It's not me, and often what happens is we funnel that to the appropriate entities. I take your call, but I'm not answering your questions. I want to be honest about that.
Dr. Goldson, it falls currently under Mr. Rhodes, but I know it ultimately reports to you. I know that you have a strategic goal of reducing legal services costs. Could you comment on that and how that might be reflected in our budget?
Yeah, so what you see on paper now is the general counsel reports to chief of staff. We just actually filled that role. The chief of our general, we now have a leader in our general counsel, Ms. Demetria Tobias. So initially, that was not filled. We work very diligently to do our very best not to outsource our cases. We have a robust staff that exists now in our general counsel office, but there are times where we are provided litigation. An example would be the summer school questioning case that we most recently won at the state level, that we have to spend additional outside legal funds on, that we not necessarily have the capability to do internally. We review every case. We do present them, as you know, in closed session, those cases that do require a large amount of litigation funds, so that you know that we are constantly monitoring and doing our very best to quickly resolve them in an expeditious manner so that we don't utilize a lot of external cost.
And I want to thank you, certainly for myself and probably for my colleagues, the magnitude of potential legal issues that's involved in the 22nd or 23rd largest school district, suburban, urban. So we don't take that for granted at all, because ultimately it's the board's fiduciary and legal responsibility. So we thank you for protecting us. Colleagues, we'll now move to Dr. Goldson, the Chief Executive Officer component of the budget. Any comments, Dr. Goldson? I'm sorry, you wanted to ask a question?
Yeah, we're going to ask her some questions.
Oh, yes. Miss, you want to start? Or Dr.
Now,
Goldson?
she
You
want to comment first.
Miss Queen.
Yes. Dr. Goldson, first of all, let me say thank you. And I know probably my colleagues going to implement the same thing. Say thank you for all your work you've done through this first year working with you. It has been a pleasure. Actually, it's been a roller coaster. We've been up and down, but it's been fun through the ride. And I just want to say that I truly appreciate you as a new board member, that you helped me understand a lot of things. And even though I know sometimes my questions are like off the wall, you come back at me and you explain it to me. And I just wanted to let you know I appreciate you. But most of all, I appreciate you, and I just want to say we appreciate you as a board, because when you came in, you cut the fat at the top. And that was so very important to my constituent, because they were so worried about how all these people up top making money, and then my teachers and my bus drivers and my cafeteria workers were not making any money. And they were the ones that were in the school systems every day working with our babies. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart that we truly thank you, even though I know we still got to work with our cafeteria workers to get them where they need to be. But we do thank you for all you have done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Queen. And Dr. Goldson, I don't see any additional questions of you. So I want to thank you and your staff for leading our discussion of this and responding to our questions. We're going to, at this point, thank the public for participating in this budget work session, which is the final one of the three that we've had. We will, our operating budget hearing, which will start now at 7 o'clock, a motion to end this section is in order. It's properly moved and seconded that we close this. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposing, no. The ayes have it. We will convene at 7 o'clock for the public hearing.